My name is Taylor. I'm the general manager at Bottles, and it was with a lot of pride that I introduced you all to Julian Van Winkle III.
Raise your hand if you've ever told anybody else about my whiskey.
I woke up this morning.
You created your own competition. It's not my fault. How that works? If you hadn't told anybody, there'd be plenty. But multiply that times, say, 10,000 people for whatever it is, for 6,000 cases a year, so that's what happens. But anyway, it's a phenomenal thing, and it's taken a while to get here, but I'm really pleased that it's very popular. And this is going to be very casual, and I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about our whiskeys and my family. My grandfather, who's on the cover of the book, my sister Sally wrote that book probably 10 or 11 years ago, I think. And we kind of use it as a sales tool because it's not that we need to, but just kind of to tell people where our family came from, and what my dad and grandfather did to promote Stitzel Weller and get it. Those brands, Old Fitzgerald, Cabin Still, Rebel Yell, and W.L. Weller were their brands. And Pappy started working for W.L. Weller & Sons wholesale company before Prohibition, and merged with them. The Stitzel Distillery made whiskey for the W.L. Weller & Sons wholesale company. Pappy worked his way up as a salesman through the ranks and became one of the owners, along with two other gentlemen, Mr. Stitzel and Mr. Farnsley, and merged to form Stitzel Weller Distillery before Prohibition. And during Prohibition, they were one of the few distilleries that were allowed to stay open during Prohibition and sell medicinal whiskey, which is where you take your pharmacy prescription from your doctor and go into the pharmacy and get a pint of whiskey every 10 days for a sore fingernail or a hurt leg or whatever, all kind of various headache, a lot of very phony ailments back then. But after Prohibition, Pappy built the Stitzel Weller Distillery, the modern day one, in Louisville, and that's where they started these about 4 brands that are on the back of the book, promote them. Pappy died in 1965. The whiskey and cigars finally got the best of them at 91 years old. Dad sold the distillery, started this brand, and I kept it going after that. My son Preston works with me. He's 4th generation. And we hooked up Buffalo Trace, like I said, about 11 years ago. And they make the whiskey to our formula and warehouse it and bottle it, do all the invoicing and so forth. So my son and I, along with Chris Comstock and Buffalo Trace, help manage the brand and do the allocations and so forth. So it's worked out very well. And like I said, the product is fantastic. Our older ages are a little mixture of Stitzel Weller and the Burnham Distillery and Buffalo Trace Distillery, so we kind of have three different options as far as the age of our whiskey and what might be in there. So it's kind of a tricky thing to figure out. But if you like it, just don't even worry about what's in there. But that's all of it. It'll obviously all eventually be Buffalo Trace distillation, so that's what we're very happy about. We use corn and wheat. Wheat being the optional grain in our bourbon versus rye, which most bourbons have it. So corn, wheat, and malted barley. And my grandfather Pappy used the wheated formula because it really ages more gracefully. Since it's going to be in the barrel so long, it doesn't pick up so much of the woodiness and the char of a barrel because it's going to be sitting in there such a long time. We put our barrels on the lower to cooler floors because it's going to be there a long time, so you don't want that expansion into the oak to really affect the flavor too much because it can get too woody. We are making more whiskey. We make about 2 or 3% each year versus last year. But people say, well, make more whiskey. Well, we are. Well, it takes 10 to 23 years for it to come to market. So it's not like vodka where you make it today, sell it tomorrow. So it's it does take time. It takes deep pockets, and that's why we have Buffalo Trace as our partners. Because when you do this yourself and you age whiskey for that long, you can imagine how much money it takes. You're putting money in the warehouse, and the whiskey's evaporating. You're paying property tax on it, and so it's the angel's share. It's evaporating, so it's a very expensive proposition. Weller is one of my family's old whiskeys. It's sold here in Rhode Island. It's almost 7 years old. I buy this whiskey and drink it. I love it. It's really great, and it's a younger version of ours. So it's a good option. Have to have a nice wheated bourbon, I would suggest that. The price is great. It's older than Maker's Mark, and it's less money. So it's again, Maker's is wheated because my grandfather was good friends with Bill Samuel Sr., and he got him started with his business back in the 50s, gave him a yeast recipe, helped him start his wheated bourbon whiskey. So we're not going to water our whiskey down. We're going to keep it at 90 proof. But let's see. You asked me about the barrels. I got sidetracked. We do taste every. My son and I, along with a few people, Buffalo Trace, taste every barrel that we bottle. And that's really the difference between us and the Weller brand. Weller is just, they take all these barrels and they dump them and they bottle them. They don't taste every barrel. So we pick out what we think are the best barrels from the group of barrels that are available each year. It's different every year. More some years than others. The percentage of barrels thrown out, we tasted 100 barrels this last week of 10-year, which will be bottled for this fall. Not one bad barrel. So that's pretty good. When we find a bad one, it's usually one that's kind of, I call it green. It's corny. It doesn't get as much aging properly, and I think that comes from probably there might be some sapwood in these staves, the white oak staves that we use. Barrels are made with charred white oak, American white oak. Sapwood is the ring around the hardwood inside the middle of a tree. If there's too much sapwood in the stave, it doesn't really age the whiskey quite right. So it's maybe a little lighter in color. It's got kind of a corn green, I say green, meaning young flavor to it. It's almost like if you ever smelled White Dog or moonshine, it's got a real grainy, corny taste to it, and that's what some of these barrels taste like. So we throw those out. And when you mix them with hundreds of other barrels, it's going to be fine. But our barrels, we dump about 5 or 6 at a time. I guess you could call us a small batch. It seems to be timed with a lot of press. We were in Fortune magazine about 2 years ago. I don't know if y'all saw the Wall Street Journal 2 Saturdays ago, but there was a big article in there about how you can't find it and how expensive it is because people are really taking advantage of the limited supply and jacking up the prices, which we are totally against. But once we ship it to a distributor, it's beyond our control of pricing. Our price to the distributors is all the same everywhere. I drink it on the ice. Now the 20 and 23, I'll drink that neat. Maybe put a drop or two of water, and I suggest you do this with any whiskey. Just put a little bit of water in there because it changes the complexity of it. You know, calms down the alcohol, lets you taste more of the grain in the wood and barrels and so forth. So, but just a few drops of water in with the 20 or the older ones. But the 15 on down, the 15 is great for an old fashioned. I normally drink mine on the rocks, actually with a twist of lemon. Try that sometime. Gives a little nice lemon zest to it. It's kind of a nice summertime or even wintertime, but it's anytime. But it's a nice option if you want to try it that way. But drinking on the rocks is fine. Cocktails are fine. Better the whiskey, better the cocktail, as far as I'm concerned. Didn't start out that way. I was a real purist and kind of a bourbon snob, and I say don't be mixing ours with anything. But once you get educated, you win a really good cocktail, and the cocktail culture these days is great, as you may know in certain parts of the country. Like I said, better the whiskey, better the cocktail.